All right, so what we got for you guys today is the scrapped ideas for No Way Home. If you don't know by now, I'm obsessed with Spider-Man. It's not like, I like Spider-Man or anything like that, but I haven't seen this video, and I always see videos where they talk about like scrapped ideas for like movies and games and all types of stuff like that. And for some reason, I always feel like there's always just more stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like you'll see like 10 videos talking about something, and then there's that 11th video, and you're like, oh, this is different from the other 10. So we're going to watch this and see what they say. Yeah.
When Marvel was making Spider-Man No Way Home, they went through many different versions of the script, character designs, and storylines just to figure out what
the fuck is this? See, this is what I'm talking about. Because I know a whole lot of things that got scrapped for these types of movies, but I've never seen this. But there is a version of Green Goblin that is Iron Man. We're not going to talk about it.
At one point, they had a different cast of villains that would go up against Spider-Man in the final battle. They also weren't sure if Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's storylines just to figure out what this movie would look like. At one point, they had a different cast of villains that would go up against Spider-Man in the final battle. They also weren't sure if Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire would make an appearance in the film.
One thing that I was confused about was, like, they had 5 members of the Sinister Six. Like, why not just throw the 6th, like, member in there? Like, that didn't make sense to me because I was like, oh, shit, 3 Spider-Mans and the Sinister Six? But it was just 5. And I was like, huh,
No Way Home was Marvel's first live-action Spider-Verse film that they were going to release. It was also the end to Tom Holland's first Spider-Man trilogy. The stakes were high, and they wanted to get this film right, so they shuffled through a lot of different ideas and ended up scrapping a lot of them. The talented artists at Marvel had some unique looks to these characters that sadly didn't make it into the final version. And thanks to the concept art, it shows us those other directions the movie almost took, with scenes that never got filmed, and deleted characters that were supposed to show up. The production for Spider-Man No Way Home started back in 2019, even before Spider-Man Far From Home had come out. Originally, they didn't plan to include any of the other Spider-Men, and the movie's main villain was going to be Kraven the Hunter. Following the events of Mysterio revealing Peter Parker as Spider-Man to the whole world, with Kraven hunting him down. But due to Sony and Marvel having a brief fallout with the rights of Spider-Man, they had to renegotiate their deal and the direction for Spider-Man 3. Sony ended up pushing Marvel to incorporate more of their Sony characters into the MCU Spider-Man franchise. We all know what happened the year after 2019, but this delay caused major changes to the film's story, and also a different reveal on how all 3 Spider-Men would meet each other. American Chavez, a character who we saw in the Multiverse of Madness, was expected to make an appearance in No Way Home and play an important role. This scene would have been how we were introduced to Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. In this concept art, we can see Peter, MJ, Ned, and even Flash Thompson, with American Chavez using her multiversal powers to bring them to the MCU. But due to delays in the film industry, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness ended up releasing after No Way Home, which led to Marvel cutting her role from the film entirely, as she had to be introduced and established to properly fit into the story. Instead of Xochitl Gomez, who played American Chavez in Doctor Strange, they ended up using Isabella Merced's face for the role, who is now playing Hawkgirl for the DC universe. John Watts, the director of No Way Home, shared how Reddit even influenced the reveal of how Tom Holland's Spider-Man would meet the other Spider-Man. Then I was on Reddit and I was looking at people who had already made fan art. It was a rooftop scene. It was sad.
I always wonder if like video game creators and movie makers and all that, if they ever like see like the things people say online and then they're like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Let's steal that and put it out. Also, I'm glad they didn't go with this idea and like this route for like exposing like the other Spider-Men to each other. Because I hate whenever like you have like such a big moment, but it's like there's some character that like most people just don't care about, or like they're just not, they don't fit the story or the narrative, but they're just there for the sole purpose of the scene. I'm glad it kind of happened. Like it was kind of random of Ned to like do the little portal shit and then they come through the portals, but like it was just better because it was like, okay, let's just do this, and it shows like something that like could be foreshadowed for him in the future, because we all know he's obviously Hobgoblin. But I'm glad they did it the way they did it, because it just felt a little more, not normal, but it felt more doable, if that makes sense. Like, oh, like Portal, like show me Peter Parker, and then a different Peter Parker comes through. Like, it just made more sense in my head. I don't know. I'm glad they did it the way they did it. I'm glad they didn't do it this other way.
2 Doctor Strange portals were open, and 2 Spider-Men are stepping out. I was like, Well, we can't do that. If that's exactly what everyone thinks we're going to do, we absolutely can't do that. It's clear that they felt insulted in some way, that the grand reveal of all the Spider-Men was too predictable, which is why they chose to have Ned Leeds open the portal using the sling ring.
Yes.
A much more unexpected reveal that fans wouldn't have theorized online before the film came out. But in the film, this is how Peter ended up meeting Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield after Aunt May's death. They just decided to change the reveal to the audience. There was even an arguably terrible idea that was pitched to John Watts, where he refused to reveal the name of the person who told him this idea, but instead of having Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield appear as characters in the film, they wanted to have the two show up as a brief cameo to help Spider-Man in the final battle, with one of the Spider-Men shooting a web to help Tom Spider-Man when he was in danger. I was like,
bro, wait a minute. Before he says what he says, could you guys have imagined? Could you imagine, like, we're waiting the whole movie, like, oh, are the other Spider-Man gonna be in it? And then it doesn't happen, and then Tom's about to, like, get stabbed or something, and then another web comes out of nowhere, and then you're just like, oh my god. And then it's another Spider-Man, and then something's gonna happen, then another web comes or something. Like, that would have been hella cool. I'm glad they did it the way they did it, though, because it gave us more time with those characters. But, dude, I couldn't imagine the moment and how that would have felt if they would have just, like, saved them, like, saved Tom. That would have been so crazy.
I won't make that happen. I absolutely refuse that. Just a character showing
It also just... Oh, wait, he's going to say it.
up for a cameo being like, hello, remember me? Okay, see you later.
Yes, I was just about to say that. If they would have been there for like 2 minutes of screen time, it would have sucked. And we would have felt robbed. But the fact that they were there for a long period of time and they just played a decent role, like in the story and helping figure out what's going on, and even seeing characters interact with their characters from their universes, like, it was just so many moments compared to, like, oh, I'm Spider-Man too. Like, there's other Spider-Man out there. Holy fucking shit. Like, I'm glad they did it the way they did it because it gave us... I feel like we got what we deserved. You know what I'm saying?
That's not gonna
happen.
happen.
We got enough time.
In an early version of the film, we were supposed to see the return of Mysterio after he faked his death in Spider-Man Far From Home. At one point in the film, there was going to be a scene where Peter finds Mysterio, who is very much alive, and would end up getting into a fight with him at a high school football game. He was going to beat up a defenseless Mysterio without his costume in front of a large crowd of people and ruin this game. Something that Mysterio actually wanted to happen to him, because he ends up getting J. Jonah Jameson to be at the game and record what unfolds. The intention of this was to discredit and ruin Spider-Man's image even more than it already was, and as we saw at the start of No Way Home, a portion of the public hated Spider-Man, where he had to deal with the Mysterio believers and suffer from the PR damage. We don't know a lot about this scene, as it was only developed in early stages of the film. Mysterio was even supposed to show up in the final act of the film at the Statue of Liberty.
See, that's our sixth member of the Sinister Six. I kept thinking that too. We're like, I didn't think super deep where I was like, oh, Mysterio's going to show up and we're going to have the Sinister Six. But I was like, we got to have somebody. And then when nobody came, I was like, all right, I mean, 5 villains is still good, but, like, you just need one more to make this team that we've all been waiting to have, like, a good movie about. So, I mean, the fact that he didn't show up, it doesn't bother me at all. I mean, I think he's still alive. Like, I don't think, you know, because he's the master of illusion, all this and that, but...
You can see in this concept art that he's going against Doctor Strange while flying in his suit. It's unclear if he was going to be using the illusion drone tech that he used in Far From Home, or if he'd actually have powers this time. Another previous Spider-Man villain that was meant to make a return.
I know I keep pausing this, but I'm a huge nerd. The fact that, like, it felt more realistic for Mysterio to use Tony Stark's equipment, but I hate the whole fact of, like, all these characters being wronged by Tony Stark and, like, having this huge grudge, and then it having an effect on, like, people like Spider-Man. Like, make these villains hate Spider-Man for Spider-Man. Like, I hate the whole Iron Man, Spider-Man, like, father-son. Like, I think it's so annoying. Because I want Peter Parker to be Peter Parker and have his whole world of issues and problems, which I think we're going to have now. But, like, we just got past 3 movies of that. You know what I'm saying? But if Mysterio would have had powers, it just would have felt so much more better. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, Master of Illusion, and then it's like, how far can his, like, powers go? You know what I'm saying? Compared to, like, oh, when this tech stops, your powers stop. So, you know.
Was Michael Keaton's Vulture. Originally, during the portion of the film where Peter brings back all of the multiversal villains to Happy's apartment, there was even concept art that shows that Peter had a different destination in mind. In this photo, we can see Peter with Green Goblin, Doc Ock, and a very frustrated Jamie Foxx all webbed up on Vulture's lawn as he is seeking help with the problem of the new multiversal villains. This would have been a fun revisit to Homecoming, as Vulture already knew who Spider-Man's identity was before the public did, and it was someone Peter could trust. There was also another illustration developed which showed Peter taking them to Vulture's garage in the hopes of fixing them before sending them back. We can see both Sandman and Doc Ock, but there are two other villains who are tied up, and we can assume they're Electro and Green Goblin. Peter also would have been teaming up with Vulture to round up the rest of the villains instead of doing it on his own. Michael Keaton would have also been given a new look as Vulture, giving us a more salvaged and scrapped together suit where he's been down on his luck and working in a junkyard. We didn't end up getting to see Vulture at all in No Way Home, as he ended up getting transported to the Morbius universe because Sony had other plans for his character, and likely wanting to set up a Sinister Six movie. There was also a different version of the battle between Doc Ock and Spider-Man on the bridge that showed us Green Goblin joining the fight. In No Way Home, we only saw Osborn briefly appear and swoop in to attack them, only for Peter and Doc Ock to be saved by Doctor Strange. The art for this scene shows us Osborn not just fighting Spider-Man, but also fighting against Doc Ock. And these two
that would have been
rivalries
cool, like a triple threat fight. One of the biggest things that, and it's not too big of a deal, I just wish Doc Ock and Spider-Man would have had like more altercations, or their fight would have been longer, because it felt like kind of short, and then when it stops, and after that Doc Ock's very understanding. I just wish we could have seen a little bit more of them like having problems or facing each other. Like, I don't know, I feel like he was the one character we didn't get to see a lot in like his evil aspect, you know?
Really chaotic on the bridge, as they would end up tearing it apart completely. We saw a much more destructive battle from what we saw in the movie, with people running away in fear to escape the collapsing bridge, and it would have shown us how truly powerful these characters were. There was also going to be a segment in the fight where the train ends up getting derailed, showing us that nobody was safe at all, and this would lead to even more negative PR damage to Spider-Man. We also got concept art of Spider-Man's first encounter with Electro at the power grid fight in the forest. This does closely resemble the scene in the film. There are only a couple of changes they made for the final version. One of them is the color of Electro's lightning, as he ends up keeping his original blue lightning that we saw in his universe. We can also see that when Sandman is shielding Peter from the Electro Blast, that his sand is actually turning into glass because it's heating up, which was an element in the film we never saw happen.
That would've been cool.
Jamie Foxx's Electro also got a much needed upgrade in No Way Home,
Yes.
compared to the electric eel abomination that he was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. This
Yeah,
is because
a lot of people hate that design, and I do too. They tried to do something different, and it just didn't work. But, I mean, this version of him is just way cooler. And then he doesn't have like his electric mask, but it shows like for a split second. So like little calls like that, like if you're gonna change like his whole appearance, at least give us the classic appearance for a short while or whatever. But this design is not bad to me. I was actually kind of worried about it when I first seen it. And the more I was looking at it, I was like, okay, he actually looks like really cool.
the artists at Marvel were tasked with reimagining Electro and making a cooler version of him. One of the first character designs of Electro was pretty identical to his previous appearance. The only noticeable difference is that he's yellow in this one, as they changed his electricity when he entered this new universe.
I hate the
They
suit.
made some variations of the yellow tinted Electro, but as seen in a majority of the other designs, this wasn't a preferred choice, as they aimed to make him more human rather than an electric eel mutation. One of the things that actually excited Jamie Foxx to sign on was that he was going to look different.
Playing to me is gonna be hot, you know, and I didn't have to be blue and things like that. As far as my character's concerned, so you're gonna be a little more hip and whatever like that. And I guess
The other character designs aimed more towards a comic book accurate approach, symbolized with the electric star on his face.
Yeah.
One of the suits was more armored up with a metallic material, and other variations of him wearing a high-tech suit. They settled on giving Electro a more amateur put-together suit, with the
Yeah, I feel like this more amateur look is really, really good. If they would have gave him the high-tech suit, I mean that first one, like that greener one, I wouldn't have had a big issue, but it looks like very close to like Green Goblin's, just for the fact that he's green. I feel like this one's super cool because it's simple and it does a lot. And Yeah.
vest that had electric conductors
And
attached to him.
he's not like a...
They also workshopped the lizard's appearance,
not like a
and they had a
punk.
much different design from what we got on screen. Compared to his current look, he had a much more frightening and menacing design,
That
where his
would've
body
been
was
better.
built like a lizard rather than having human traits. Instead of a rounded head, they gave him a snout while also changing his eyes and scales to match.
Dude, this would have been so much better. Like, if you make, like, right here, if you make his face just a little bit, like, longer. Because I hated the lizard's face in Amazing Spider-Man 1. I hated it a lot, and his voice, I don't know, dude. Everything about it. Then the part where he has, like, the lab coat for half a second when he comes out of the, in the bathroom, comes out, like, from under the toilet. Bro, I don't know. I want him to look like a fucking dinosaur. You know what I'm saying? Like, he has to have, like, and he has to be massive. Like, he just has to, but I don't know. And even in No Way Home, like, he was barely in the movie. Honestly, that's what it felt like. He was locked up in a truck for a hot minute. And then even the fights, like, you see him for split seconds. You don't get to see him a whole lot.
Features of a lizard. The artist
Missed
drew
opportunities.
inspiration from the comics with these designs and decided to put some clothes on his body, giving
looks
him the
tight.
lab coat and purple pants that he would typically wear. It
Yes.
wasn't a requirement that they needed a comic book accurate suit, but certainly was an upgrade compared to his earlier form.
And that's the thing, too. He doesn't have to be comic book looking. If he has the lab coat, he can have it on for a second. It comes off. But, like, if he has, like, the pants, kind of, it'll be really cool. And even if he doesn't have that for long, he himself just has to look cool. Like, I think if his face would have been longer and he just would have been, like, a little bit bigger, I think people would have just liked it way more.
There was also an idea that gave him a different depiction, where he had a robotic suit that had him looking like a tamed weapon. All
No.
of these vials and gadgets on him were supposed to be a built-in control mechanism where he had no control over himself.
So dumb.
Similar to Doc Ock's tentacles taking control of his body, they didn't end up incorporating any of these ideas or features to improve his character look, because they had concerns about all these changes creating a new character. They believed that heavily altering the look and changing a character's bone structure would be too drastic of a change. This would make audiences feel like it's not the same character that they knew from a previous film.
Okay, time out, though. You can't say that and then change Electro from being blue to being like black, and then, like, his whole design, the way he acts, his haircut, his lightning being yellow. You can't say that statement and then change a whole nother character. Like, Electro changed altogether, and it was for the better. So you can't say that and then be like, we can't change the lizard because we're afraid of how fans are going to receive it. The difference is if you change him and he looks better, then it's going to be good. But he honestly looked worse in the movie. He looked very, like, just weird. I think it was, like, the CGI, and, like, his mouth looked different, and he just looked dumber than he did before.
Which was the point of bringing all these characters together in the multiverse. Or due to the lizard having the least amount of screen time in the film compared to other villains, he
Yes.
likely wasn't a priority of a character that they had to get right, like
Look,
Doc Ock,
weird.
where the artist went through many different iterations of designs, trying to figure out how to properly give him a new look in No Way Home. It seems like there were some decisions on whether they should take his exact look from Spider-Man 2, or if they should give him a complete new makeover similar to Jamie Foxx's Electro. Some of the early designs showed him having a much more comic book accurate suit,
It looks
one
cool.
that we've never properly seen in any of the Spider-Man movies, but only in the cartoons or comics. They even had an aged up version of Doc Ock with longer hair and a beard.
That looks like
His face
futuristic.
resembles Alfred Molina, but it is difficult to see that with him being completely unrecognizable. He also had these buckles wrapped around him, which was different from his other designs. This version would have shaken things up and made it harder for casual fans to recognize that this was the same Doc Ock that they watched 20 years ago. They also made a much more pleasant blend between Doc Ock's Spider-Man 2 costume and his comic book counterpart.
That looks
The
like
jumpsuit he was
the Spider-Man game. Spider-Man PS4, that looks like that Doc Ock. The difference is the color scheme of... No, he wears green. It's just like darker.
wearing had
I don't like the arms, though. I like the arms looking the way that they did.
comic.
I'm glad they didn't change the way he looked in the movie, though. Some characters, like, when they're portrayed so... Like, why did Electro look the way he did and act the way he did? Like, the whole purpose and everything. You change that for the better, yeah, it works. But if something already worked, you don't need to change it necessarily. Doc Ock was 10 out of 10 before. He was 10 out of 10 in this one.
Book color theme, and it also incorporated the goggles that we saw him previously wear. In the film, Marvel settled on giving Doc Ock a slightly updated version of his suit from Spider-Man 2, because having massive redesigns with all these characters could cause confusion on why they look different. Green Goblin was a character that was crucial to the plot of No Way Home, and they had to nail his look. They wanted to reimagine what Norman Osborn would look like in this new universe, and they took some different routes. Some of the illustrations had him wearing the original Green Goblin armor from the first Spider-Man movie, which we did end up getting for the bridge scene where he was briefly teased. He would later have a blend of his old suit and the purple hoodie he was wearing at the homeless shelter.
Dude, I'm gonna tell y'all straight up. Okay, so I do wish we could have seen masked Green Goblin a little bit longer. But the way he looked, minus the mask, because he just had the goggles on, he's flying around, whatever. When he has the armor and it looks a little different, and it's like broken up and just different, and then you add this hoodie, it's purple, and it's on, I'm like, dude, this is actually so good for the character. Because, like, the original Green Goblin, he's got, like, the goblin face, and then he's got, like, the purple hat hood thing. So when you throw, like, a hoodie on, it's just torn up and it's just on, bro, that was a good call.
This scruffy hoodie was another addition to his new look that incorporated his comic book color scheme for Green Goblin and provided an alternative attempt at giving him the tunic that he would wear in the comics.
Yes,
An early idea in the film was to have all the villains raid a damage control facility after betraying Peter Parker at his condo. Even Electro would get an upgrade of his own from this raid. The suit that he's wearing in this photo would have been assembled using stolen Iron Man arc reactor technology. There's a fascinating version of the Green Goblin where he's actually riding Vulture's wings instead of his own glider. For some reason, they didn't want Norman to keep his glider from the first film, and they thought it would be more MCU suitable if he was able to use the Vulture's glider from damage control. During that raid, he also would have stolen the Dark Elves armor, which we last saw in Thor: The Dark World, and Norman would apply this to his own Green Goblin costume. This was a scrapped idea that was pitched to Marvel, which got turned down, but it was a clever way to make him more goblin-like without having to mutate or change Norman's DNA. There were some alternative looks where they tried to give Green Goblin a much more tactical military-esque suit, where he would end up having to repair his broken suit, which we can see in these small chunks of metal missing from it. If you look at his arm, you'll see he has this blade attached to him, which is apart from his damaged glider. They didn't end up using this exact design in the photo, but incorporated the glider blade into Green Goblin's final design, where he uses it against Peter at the Statue of Liberty battle. One scrapped idea with Green Goblin involved something that may have been controversial and gotten a lot of hate from Marvel fans. There were two versions of concept art showing Green Goblin flying with parts of an Iron Man suit that he stole from the damage control facility, and another one painted to suit his comic book color scheme. Instead of him flying on his glider, there was an idea to have him flying on one of the Edith Stark drones from Far From Home.
I'm so glad that didn't happen. A big gripe
that some Marvel fans had with the MCU's version of Spider-Man was that he was Iron Boy Jr. and wasn't really a Spider-Man, where people wanted a more grounded, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, where Sony ended up going in a different direction at the end of the film, setting him up to be his own solo character, isolated from the Avengers and Stark Industries. Marvel adding more Stark tech to the final battle could have conflicted with this path that they wanted to take.
Yeah, because the thing too is, like, Green Goblin didn't need Iron Man stuff, and also, like, it goes back to what I said, like, where it's like, it's Iron Man's too hyper focused into this narrative. So imagine, like, all of these Spider-Man villains are like, oh, let's go get Iron Man stuff, and then they do, and then they all have variations of, like, Iron Man's armor. And they're just using, like, then it's like, oh, these aren't even these characters anymore. These are these characters using Iron Man abilities. That's where that becomes, like, dumb to me, and I'm glad they did not go that path. Because it's cool seeing Green Goblin fly on his glider, throwing his pumpkin bombs, just doing his thing. Electro using his lightning. And then, like, just looking their ways. Where it's like, oh, we are Spider-Man villains doing Spider-Man villain stuff. Like, we don't need Iron Man's things. There's some concepts where, like, the Vulture wings being a glider, like, that's cool, but, like, in, like, a different universe, or, like it is a concept is cool, but it being in the final product, it's like, no, dude, we need We need the original stuff.
It also would have changed the final battle, getting rid of the need of Green Goblin's pumpkin bombs, when you can just shoot Iron Man blasts at them instead.
Exactly.
And changing the image of Green Goblin and instead making him an Iron Green Goblin.
Yes.
Other illustrations show the new Captain America Statue of Liberty, signifying that this is where the final battle would always take place, and how they planned on ending it with a duel between Green Goblin and Tom Holland's Spider-Man. The scene of MJ getting saved by Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man almost didn't happen, because in one piece of concept art, the idea was to have MJ fall from the building, and Doctor Strange's cloak of levitation would end up saving her instead. But they decided to pivot to the idea of Andrew Garfield saving her. That way it would add more to the story, and give Andrew Garfield a moment of redemption for not being able to save his MJ.
What's crazy is, like, who's coming up with, like, some of these concepts? Like, oh, let's have Doctor Strange's cape save MJ. Like, that makes no sense. The moment that she is falling, I'm like, they're gonna have Andrew Garfield save her. It's the first thought that pops in my head. So imagine you're thinking that, and you're in the theater, and then the cape comes out of nowhere. You're like, the cape? Why is the cape here? And then, I don't know, dude. And then it is cool because it's like he gets that redemption. Then he's looking at her and he's just like, man, at least I saved you. I couldn't save Gwen. Like, just all that. So many moments. And it's like, I couldn't imagine this movie without those moments.
There was some artwork that was developed that showed Ned Leeds riding a Green Goblin glider during the final battle, which was a nod to Ned being the Hobgoblin in the comics. There were some fan theories floating around that Ned might become the Hobgoblin, a character similar to Green Goblin who has had different characters play him, and in the comics he has been played by Harry Osborn, Flash Thompson, and Ned Leeds.
Yes.
In the artwork, you can see the resemblance.
He also, in the movie, he wears the same colors as the Hobgoblin. There's also, like, a bunch of, like, swords and daggers and all that inside of his, I think it's his grandma or his mom or whoever. I can't remember right now. They're just on the wall. So it's like there's a lot of things. And then also when him and Peter talk to each other, and then he's like, I'll never try to kill you. And then it's like, or he says, promise me you won't try to kill me. I think he just says, I'll never try to kill you or something. I can't remember. So that it's nods of, like, if you know Spider-Man enough, then you know everybody Peter Parker loves always either turns on him or tries to kill him or they die. But it's like his best friend always turns on him. And Ned is his best friend in this franchise.
To the Hobgoblin costume with the colors that Ned's wearing, Marvel actually didn't have any plans for Ned to turn into a villain in No Way Home. The artist Phil Saunders confirms that this was more of a reference to Ned being the Hobgoblin, rather than pitching a plot twist near the end of the movie, and it was more of a fun idea for Ned to get on Green Goblin's glider and start throwing pumpkin bombs at the other villains. A big reason this theory started to blossom was that when trailers were coming out, there were a lot of villains being teased, and people were noticing they were getting awfully close to the number 6.
Yes.
Well, it turns out, in an early version of the script, Venom was going to have a different role in No Way Home, and that Tom Holland's Spider-Man would potentially run into the symbiote. A lot of people thought that the symbiote was going to be introduced and play a role in the storyline. This artwork was made by Thomas Ducrust, who did concept art for No Way Home and has done some for other Marvel films in his career. He released this photo, but didn't confirm why it was created or if it was attached to No Way Home. The writers for No Way Home even shared that there was an early version of the script where Venom would have more screen time in the movie, and that he'd actually show up at the Statue of Liberty battle to fight along the other villains. The art of Mysterio at the Statue of Liberty kind of represents that.
Because the movie didn't need Venom. Like, I love Venom. If I didn't have Spider-Man, Venom would be my thing. But, like, the movie didn't need Venom because Venom is already, like, he's a super huge problem for Spider-Man as it is. Especially because, like, Toby and Andrew, they know about Venom. But, no, Andrew doesn't know about Venom. What am I talking about? What I'm trying to say is Venom is so big of an impact that he didn't need to help 5 other villains try to fight the Spider-Man. Like, there just needs to be a movie where they face each other. And Tom's like, holy shit, I'm about to fight you. The reason I thought that a second ago is because I just remembered, like, 2 of the Spider-Man say, I fought aliens, or I fought an alien. And then Andrew is the one who says, I want to fight an alien. So I had it mixed up for a second. Stop. Stop.
because it shows there's many different iterations of who was going to be in that final battle. They concluded by saying it was a fun idea that the sixth member of the Sinister Six got stuck in a bar and would end up leaving a little bit of a symbiote behind. Instead of Doctor Strange and Peter having their fight in the mirror dimension, they were originally going to be traveling across the multiverse and traveling to Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's universes, to specific and recognizable moments from those trilogies, and just casually fighting in the midst of everything going on. For example, they had concept art of them fighting at the clock tower from the Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's unclear if this is sometime in the future after Gwen Stacy fell, or it's during the battle going on in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. They also went to the wrestling match from Tobey Maguire's first Spider-Man movie, and also the train scene from Spider-Man 2, where Peter has Doctor Strange pinned to the front of the train, just like Tobey Maguire.
See, that part, like, that wouldn't have been necessary because there was already so many trains happening during their fight, so you already get that reference, so he doesn't have to, like, stand on front and be in the same pose.
Peter and Doctor Strange also would have gone to the building where Tobey Maguire fought Venom with the metal pipes, and they also had a creative idea of Doctor Strange and Peter having a sword fight. There was even a funny idea of Doctor Strange getting mistaken for a street performer by this little kid at Times Square, and in the background would have been Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man fighting against Electro. All these different...
These concepts aren't bad. But if you show the other Spider-Man fighting at those moments, then it's kind of bad. But like the clock tower, for example, like if it's falling apart as they appear there, then it's not a problem. So, I mean, I don't know. That's not, like, a bad idea necessarily, like, if it would have made it into the movie. Because fans would have been like, oh, my God. But I think what they wanted was they wanted our first impression of the Spider-Man to be the Spider-Man popping up. Like, that is the best way to do it. Plus, we didn't know. Like, we had the impression that, like, we were going to see them. But it's like if you see that in the movie, you're like, oh, we're going to see them. Like, we're about to see them. Compared to, like, just getting surprised when they come to the portal.
Different illustrations were just ideas they had in mind, and none of them were actually filmed on set. The movies in the MCU are shaped by the talented artists and writers who work incredibly hard to make these films the best they can possibly be. These were some of the unique ideas that artists for Spider-Man No Way Home made that ended up getting scrapped. Let me know in the comments if there were any designs or concepts that you liked that should have stayed in the final version of the film.
Some of these, what the fuck? Oh my God. Hold on, let me get back to that last video.
Under the deal.
Yeah, some of these ideas, that was a good video. What the fuck? Yeah, some of these I can't even talk. Some of those ideas are not bad at all. I mean, I'm glad we got the final product that we did get because No Way Home was a banger. I'm excited for Brand New Day. I can't lie to you.